Hi there guys, and welcome to another episode of the Cover Zero Show with me, your host Simon Conboy. For those of you who've been watching regularly, you'll know it's Friday, it's the weekly review. This episode covering the week of the 9th of June 2017. So I'll be going through the week's news, giving my opinions on it. Been a fair bit of news this week, especially compared to the last few. Going over how I think it will impact the teams and players that it does. And then giving my top 10 current running backs in the NFL heading into the 2017 season. So, let's hop right into the news. A big bit of news this week for a big man, and it's unfortunately very bad news. Nick Fairley has some kind of heart condition. There's a possibility that he may be forced into retirement. Always unpleasant to hear about this kind of thing, a career being cut short. Very bad news for the Saints, of course. He was one of their best defenders on what's not a particularly talented team on that side of the ball. I think this is both obviously far worse news for the player than the team. Terrible news for him, especially having just signed a long-term deal to remain with the Saints on pretty significant money. But for the Saints, this is just a huge loss. The line was looking to be the strength of that defence with him, the second-year player Sheldon Rankins and Cam Jordan. That looks like a very good group to build that defence around. Now that they're losing one of those pieces, I think that hurts. Of course, in the run game is where that will be most significantly felt. Especially at this point where there were nose tackles, a good group of players available at this point in the off-season, the draft having come and gone, it's someone that they can't replace. So, yeah, I think this is, if this does turn out to be the case, which of course I hope it's not, even though I'm a Bucs fan, I hate this kind of stuff. For the sake of the man himself, and also for the sake of the Saints, I hope this doesn't end up being the case and he can play. If not, obviously horrible news for both sides. A real big blow for the Saints at this point of the off-season. We've also had a bit of a culling continuing in New York as they appear to just be more than willing to tank next season in order to make sure they get the number one overall pick, or at least that's how it's looking. Last year's Browns was one of the most talent-devoid rosters I'd ever seen. This Jets group, they're well on their way to falling into that kind of class. Whilst they've got some studs on the defensive line, there's not much else. They've released David Harris, the long-time middle linebacker. I don't think this is a particularly bad move for the team. At age 33, and he's been an average to above average player for most of his career. He's been a very steady, solid, reliable player for them. Even if he's not necessarily a high impact player, I think this gives them an opportunity to play some younger guys. Of course, Deron Lee, you have to expect he'll be the centerpiece of that linebacker group as a first round pick last year. They brought back Demario Davis, who's been in the scheme before. I think this is a kind of move that benefits both sides. David Harris can go end his career elsewhere, somewhere where he might have an opportunity to compete. This Jets team's clearly at least a couple of years away at this juncture. And the Jets, they get a little bit worse in the hope of securing the number one pick for next season. Similarly, they've released Eric Decker, which does mean I need to revamp my power rankings a little bit. The Jets weren't the worst receiver group in the league. Now they are. Decker, of course, a perfectly serviceable number 2 wide receiver in the NFL, of course, would have been functioning as their number 1. Again, this makes a degree of sense. This is a team that just needs to embrace the rebuild, get younger. To me, it says they don't think they've got the quarterback on their roster, because if you're thinking Christian Hackenberg's the guy, you've got to give him somebody who's a proven NFL talent to throw to. And with Decker having been cut, that player is no longer there. They've got Austin Seferian Jenkins, Quincy Enunwa, and they're not much, to be honest. Even though I thought Enunwa played quite well last year, Jenkins can't be relied upon. The other guys, young, unproven. It's going to be a long old season in New York. Again, Decker's someone I could certainly see catching on a lot of receiver needy teams in the league. I'll discuss some of those teams when I mention what was, for me, one of the most shocking moves of this offseason. Jeremy Maclin being cut by the Chiefs. Personally, do not understand this move. I do not think the Chiefs are particularly strong at that position. I still think, obviously, Travis Kelce is their number one option in the passing game. But Maclin, in terms of the wide receiving options, alright, he didn't have a great season last year, dealt with a lot of injuries, didn't play that much, wasn't enormously effective when he was on the field. But the rest of the guys there, as Tyreek Hill, I need to see him do it over the course of a whole season. And even, if he does essentially play as well as he did last year over the course of 16 games, they still need someone else. And Jeremy Maclin absolutely could be that guy. This is a consistent, reliable receiver. I don't think he's particularly well suited for being a number one. If you saw my Alex Smith rankings for the team that we deemed the acceptables, where I rated the most average players at each position, he was the definition to me of an average, mediocre number one receiver. Which is to say, a lot of teams could use him. Absolutely shocking to me. I certainly think this makes the Chiefs worse. I'm honestly not too sure what the thinking was to this move. I think him, Kelce, and Tyreek Hill would have looked like a good trio heading into the season. I think this roster is really loaded. And I'm a bit perplexed by this one. I have to be critical of the Chiefs. I expect to see him catch on. It's a fairly similar situation to Decker, except I think you've got more upside with Maclin. I think Macklin's capable of carrying a heavier workload for a team. We've not really seen Decker perform as a number one. He's always been best as part of a double act. Both of these players, of course, you're going to have the usual suspects at this point. Looking at them, you'd think, I can certainly see Eric Decker in San Francisco. That would make sense to me. They could do with another veteran option, just have Pierre Garçon and Decker. It's acceptable, uninspiring, but it would help tide them over for a while. A team like the Rams could certainly consider it, although who knows, either one of these guys. The Bills, of course, Sammy Watkins has been injury prone. Relying on a rookie, like a second round rookie like Zay Jones, isn't necessarily a great option. I think Maclin would be a great fit in Carolina, where they could do with a reliable, solid, dependable route runner. So those, I think, would be the front runners. You can even see Cleveland possibly getting involved. They look pretty weak at the receiver position. Also, I think there's an outside shot at the Arizona Cardinals. Could particularly be interested in Jeremy Maclin. I don't feel they've got a player who's a polished route runner on that team that can play outside. Him and Fitzgerald and John Brown, I think, would be a really good threesome. He'd fit in very well there. Baltimore, of course, do with either one of these guys. I think their receiving crew is also particularly weak. But again, the same applies with what I've said about David Harris for the Eric Decker side being released. This is a team that's just looking to cut the veterans that aren't going to be there for the long term, and that's understandable. This team is not going anywhere in the next couple of years. Back to some injury news. Taylor Decker has just had shoulder surgery. Let's see. He may not be ready for the beginning of the season for the Lions. Now, I think this is really bad news. I thought he was fantastic last season as a rookie. The offensive line looks to be the strength of this team, along with Stafford. I don't think they're great at the skill positions. They're okay. But this offense, I think, was going to rely on Amir Abdullah finally staying healthy, and this offensive line being a great road grading unit that can give Stafford some time to find what's a solid but unspectacular group of wide receivers. If they're missing their left tackle for any protracted period of time, or if it takes him a while to adjust and get back into form, I think that's going to be real tough on them. Yeah, of course, the Packers will be the favourites in that division. The Lions can't afford to get off to a slow start, and honestly, I think losing one of their key young players on offense for any period of time could really do that. I think this team can compete, but I don't think there's a lot of depth there, and injuries such as this one have the potential to really hurt them. And the Ravens, once again, this team just can't shake the injury bug. 2 injuries in the space of 2 days. Dennis Pitter fracturing his hip again. He's been released as a result. Had a really good comeback season for them last year. Was probably going to be their number one option in the passing game heading into the season. Him and Joe Flacco have a very good understanding. However, you'd have to think at this point his career is likely done. I just can't see a guy coming back from 3 injuries to the same part of his body in a fairly small space of time. Clearly there's been some I don't have a medical degree, but some kind of structural damage, or there's some kind of weakness there. And if that's the case, playing tight end probably not a great idea for him. This really hurts this team. I've been very vocal that I think the Ravens are destined to come right down to the middle of the pack, or possibly lower next season. I think the roster doesn't have a huge amount of talent on it, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. The receiving core in particular is a weak group, and losing the most dependable player, that's not going to help in the slightest. And as I say, real bad news for Dennis Pitter. I believe it's likely his career's over at this point in time. Also the day before that, they lost Vaughn Young, the corner, with a torn ACL. I thought he played well enough last year. I think this year he'd have possibly had a chance to start either in the nickel or as their number 2 opposite Jimmy Smith, whilst they blood Marlon Humphrey. They signed Brandon Carr. I'm not sure what he'll be able to contribute. So the Ravens have some depth there. I do think they've got a great secondary. That really is the strength of this roster. So if they were going to suffer an injury, might as well be, I suppose, to a backup at a position with a lot of depth. It hurts them less than it would at another position. But again, this is bad news for the Ravens. You can never have too many corners in today's league, and especially a big injury like this. You never know how a player will come back from it in the long run. And we've had a couple of signings over the course of the week. First one being the 49ers signing Elvis Louis to a 2-year deal. Haven't got the contract info yet. I think this is a really solid move. This team, as I've said previously, is going to be relying on its defence to come good. I think adding a veteran, particularly to a young group on the defensive front, where they've invested incredibly heavily with 3 top 10 picks, guy who's been in the league for a long time, had a lot of success, even if he doesn't necessarily contribute enormously on the field. And last year he did struggle, was injured, and age may be catching up with him. He's 33, 34 now. Just having him around as a presence, I think, could certainly be helpful for this team. If he can recapture some of his past form, he'll be their best pass rusher. So I think this is a really savvy move. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it's a great fit for the Niners. A shame for Doomville, wasn't more interest. Maybe go join a contender. But it's one of those things. And then crazily, Patriots, some of those guys really do not want to leave New England. Julian Edelman signing a 2-year, $11 million deal with $9 million guaranteed. Now, I am of the belief that Edelman could be more than a slot receiver, but I don't think he'd be great on the outside. Just New England is absolutely perfect for him. The understanding him and Brady have is as good as any combination in the league. They know exactly how to make the most of his talents. Clearly he's more than happy there, and who can blame him? He's been an integral part of the offense over the last few years, and I'm sure he could have got more money had he elected to hit the market at any point, but he'll be in New England. This is a great re-signing for them. Behind Rob Gronkowski, he's their most reliable target, and Gronk when he's on the field. And he's integral to what they do. I've said this before, Brady is just a ruthless quarterback who is more than happy to just spam you man style with drags and slants and all the underneath stuff, and Edelman is the recipient of a lot of those passes. So this is just a great deal. The rich get richer whilst also saving a lot of money, which ends up a really weird analogy. I probably won't use that one ever again. And the Colts have signed running back Christine Michael. I don't think I mentioned this last week. It makes sense. I mean, Frank Gore, you don't see many 34-year-old running backs, whilst I've got to say formed admirably behind a pretty poor line in his time in Indianapolis, and considering his advanced age, the wheels could fall off at any moment and he could become, a liability. Michael's one of the league's great enigmas. He's had some great games in his career in Seattle, but it's just never seemed to click mentally for him. Whether it's him just being a knucklehead or not willing to put the effort in, I'm not so sure. I'm sure he's on the veteran minimum at this point, and they'll just be hoping for the best. And Marlon Mack, the rookie, I'm sure it's going to be a pretty open competition for snaps in that backfield if Michael can finally turn his career around, because the talent is undeniably there. Then this could be a great signing. As I say, I wouldn't be shocked if he doesn't make the roster. We've seen him bouncing around the league like crazy in the last 3-4 years. So who knows what's going to happen there. So there you have it. That's my breakdown of the week's news, and we'll head right on in to my top 10 running backs currently in the NFL. So coming in at number 10, we've got Titans running back DeMarco Murray. Now, I think what we learned from his time in Philly is he's not the most dynamic runner in the league. It's certainly a scheme type guy. However, when you get him in that scheme, a one cut power run type scheme, which the Titans absolutely have, made the pickup last season very intelligent for them. He really was, the main force behind that offense. He's very effective. He's also a very competent receiver, and he's good in the passing game as a blocker as well, which I think is a massively underrated trait. Can carry the load. He has been banged up at the times during his career, but when he's healthy, he's a great power option. He fits this scheme absolutely perfectly as a powerhouse once he gets to the second level. Good burst, maybe not the best straight line speed, but certainly fast enough. Him and Derrick Henry, I think, are a really good combination. They'll wear teams out. I think they'll continue to do so next season. DeMarco Murray, big part of that Titans offense. I think possibly even in year 2 could certainly be even better. But remember, this is a young offensive line. He got some more weapons, another year of experience for Mariota. Don't be surprised if DeMarco Murray is up there amongst the league leaders in rushing next season. Coming in at number 9, I struggled with this one, with where to put this guy, but I'm going with the raw talent, and that is Todd Gurley. Of course, his rookie season, he looked absolutely phenomenal and thoroughly justified his being picked in the top 10 by the Rams, even coming off that injury that he suffered in college. However, last year, he sunk many fantasy teams, including my own. The logic was sound. He had an incredible rookie year. You knew this team was going to be run heavy because heaven knows they're not going to throw the ball very much, looking at the roster they went into last season with, and I think the same will likely be true this year. But something was just missing last season. But this is the top 10 list, so we've got to focus on the positives. We have seen what he can do. This is a high-end power back with track speed and the ability to beat guys with quickness, cuts, and he can be an asset in the passing game. I don't think he's got great hands, but certainly a weapon there. He's got all the potential in the world. We saw that his rookie season. I still believe in that potential. I just think last year was a combination of him being just demoralised. We saw toward the end of the season when he was saying the team basically had a high school offense or a college offense? Frankly, that might be offensive to a lot of the, I'm sure, great high school coaches there are over there in the States. I mean, they were atrocious. He didn't get any help from the passing game. Didn't get any help from the offensive line, which is one of the poorest units in the league. But you didn't see what you saw that rookie season, which is explosiveness, power, and elusiveness. You saw everything in that rookie season, and it's definitely still there. Whether he was playing with some nagging injuries last year, I'm not sure. But there was just something missing. I'm putting him here based on potential. I'm a big fan of his. Hopefully he can come good and make me look good next season. He's not been drafted number 3 overall in my fantasy draft by me, though. If I'm picking there again, I can guarantee that much. Coming in at number 8 is Devonta Freeman. Now, he's a really tough guy to rank because I do think he gets a lot of help. I think that offense last year was so well-rounded and deep at so many positions and could attack in so many different ways that he was a beneficiary of that. Although every player in that offense was. I think Coleman and him provide so many options because they're both good receivers of the ball. Freeman's good in all 3 phases. He can block as well. I don't think he's the most talented guy, but he's an effort player. He's certainly got the quickness. Maybe not the fastest, maybe not the most powerful, but he's elusive. That power comes from a burst. He's certainly got good acceleration. Great vision, very patient runner. You see a lot of that. I think vision and patience are more important in today's game than ever because of the pace of it. You've got to adjust to that at the NFL level. I think that's what a lot of college backs who have a lot of success there. Just you get to the NFL, you need to study, you need to understand what teams are going to try and do to stop you. And also you've just got to have that great instinct to go with it. And I think Freeman is one of the best in the league at seeing a hole and utilising it effectively. It's not just enough to go through a hole. It's manipulating the space around you so that when you're there, it's as clear as possible. You make the right decision once you are through as to where to go next. Give yourself opportunities at one-on-ones and then make the most of those. And I think he does a great job of that. As I say, I think his great strength is all 3 phases of the game. He is effective. His productivity makes me want to put him higher on this list, but I just feel there are guys that are more talented, and the Falcons' offense is a massive boon. But I think 8 is fair. It's about fair. Coming in at number 7, we've got a bit of a one-year wonder again. Sort of difficult one to rank. This running back list was a lot harder to do than I expected going in. I've got Ajayi, the running back for the Miami Dolphins. Man, he looked like an old school runner last year. You don't see too much of that these days. Just straight ahead, power back. Went absolutely nuts on those, a couple of games against Buffalo, against Pittsburgh. Really wore teams down late on in games. This was when he was at his most effective. It's what you want to see from your power backs. That's kind of their job, wear you down. He's a lot faster than you'd think. I saw him get into the second level often last year. I think it's a good group. I certainly think he can improve in the passing game. That holds him back a little bit. But I think as a power runner in the league today, I think he's right near the top. He's got that extra bit of burst and speed that a lot of the other power backs like your LeGarrette Blunts don't. That makes him, to me, a superior player and option. And I think he's going to continue to grow as a player, especially if the Dolphins' offensive line can stay healthy and be productive next year. I think Pouncey's health will be a big part of that, and also Laramie Tunsil's adjustment to the left tackle spot. But if both of those things work out, I expect to see a monster season. I think Ajayi will be the focal point of that offense, unless Tannehill really does take his game up a notch. But yeah, we'll wait and see. But yeah, number 7, Ajayi. I think that's fair at this point. Coming in at number 6, possibly the most unheralded great rookie campaign, possibly in the time I've been watching the game. Who knows how much further back it stretches, but Jordan Howard. Now, of course, the Bears were a tie fire last year, and unless you're a Bears fan, there was not a huge amount of reason to watch them, but that shouldn't overshadow how good this kid was. I mean, it is rare you see a rookie running back come into the league and have the kind of impact he did on such a poor team. Whilst the interior of their offensive line is great. I mean, it's really good. Carl Long, Josh Sitton, Cody Whitehair. That's a good trio. The tackles are poor. The passing game was non-existent for the most part. And this guy was just doing it all. There were games where he was the Bears' offense. Can do everything well. Was shockingly effective as a pass blocker. We're seeing some of these guys get hitting the field earlier with better pass blocking skills. Then that you need to have it stay on the field. We saw it with Zeke last year. I think he'll improve in that area. Jordan Howard was quite good at it. He's good in the receiving game. I mean, he could really put up monstrous numbers next year. I would hope they don't run him into the ground simply because I don't think this team's going to be very good. And I do worry often when you get a player, seeing the kind of number of touches that he could see. With thinking like David Johnson from last year, I do worry about a player's shelf life. I hope that doesn't happen to Howard, but I mean, this guy's fantastic. Again, runs with great power, great vision, and I think he's got great lateral quickness, and that really does separate him from some of the guys just behind him on this list. I think he's only going to get better as the team around him does. I think this potential future All-Pro. Keep your eye out on this kid. He was honestly phenomenal last year. It's shocking how little attention he got. It really does disappoint me, but an unbelievable player, more than deserving of a high spot on this list. He could have been even higher, but just didn't quite play enough games, and we'll see if teams can catch up to him a little bit. He's certainly going to get all of the attention next year, you would have to think. Coming in at number 5, we've got Melvin Gordon. Now, I loved Gordon coming out of college. I thought he was a great pickup for the Chargers, and then obviously that rookie campaign was a colossal disappointment. Again, he was on my fantasy team that year. You don't want me picking up your running backs in fantasy. This has been proven over the last 7 years of our fantasy league. I am a curse on them. But last year I didn't have him, and he had a great campaign. Would easily have crossed the 1,000-yard barrier had he not missed, 3 or 4 games at the end of the season with injury. Basically was the running back that I expected to see in his rookie campaign. Offensive line has not been great in San Diego. I think that's a real plus point. I mean, I look at the guys that I've sort of revealed on this list thus far. Outside of Todd Gurley, these were all good run blocking teams last season. This guy did not have that privilege. Chargers were not great in that regard. They were okay, but not great. Certainly made the most of what he got. Explosive, can make the big plays. Very shifty in the open field. More powerful than he looks. An asset in the passing game, which I think is a big deal because Rivers does like to use the running backs more than you'd think. For a guy that's quite aggressive, he's actually quite happy to take a check down, and Gordon's great in that area. He's very good in those sort of small spaces. Very sudden athlete, great acceleration, top end speed. I think he's a very good player. I think he's only going to be better because I think this Chargers offense has improved significantly this offseason. I'm really excited to see him next season. I get a lot of people probably think this is a bit high, but I really do believe in this kid. I think he's going to be great. So moving on, we got number 4, a player that's somewhat fell off the radar, I think simply because of where he now plays. But man, has he been good in his time there, even if he has missed some games, and that is LaShawn McCoy. This is just, I mean, I didn't really get to see Barry Sanders play. I feel like this is probably the closest I've gotten. Open field, I mean, just forget about it. It's just sets guys up and makes guys look bad. We all know about his lateral speed, his ability to just turn on a dime. Some of the most disgraceful cuts you'll see. Lethal in the passing game as a result. High-end speed. Far more effective running up the middle than I think he's ever gotten credit for. Obviously, it's not what you want to be doing with him all game. He's just pounding him up the gut with, up the A gaps. But he can do that job for you. This is a dynamic, dangerous player. The best open field runner I've possibly seen in my time as an NFL fan. And he's been incredibly dynamic. I mean, especially considering how poor... said this many a time now, and even I'm getting sick of saying it. Tyrod Taylor is an enigma. That passing game is inconsistent and frankly maddening at times. And still this guy's just been producing like crazy there in Buffalo. You know, if you're going to play this team, that's what you've got to stop. And teams still struggle. Heck of a player. Possibly the most dangerous weapon in the league at the running back position. Well, actually no. Because I think who's 1 and 2 on the list, and no, it's not quite on that level. But, yeah, he's been doing it for a long time. Great player. He comes in at number 4. And then coming in at number 3, we've got last year's 4th overall pick, Cowboys rookie sensation, Ezekiel Elliott. Am I marking him down a little bit for playing behind that offensive line? I don't think so. I just think the two guys that are above him are just absurd talents. And if you watched them both last season, they've just got that little extra edge on Zeke in terms of the passing game. They've both been in the league a little while longer. I think Elliott is more of an every down back, as we've seen, one of the guys above. He's had injury problems. And yeah, I think he's got the most dynamic inside game as a power runner. But he's not quite got that same level. But I'll talk about those two guys when I get there, actually. I'm starting to divert and make it sound bad on Zeke here. Yeah, he was phenomenal. Once he took him a couple of weeks to get going, but once he did, obviously got the help of the best offensive line in football. That might not be the case next year, so it'll be interesting to see how he adjusts without Ronald Leary and Doug Free, who were both good players. I still think he'll be very successful. He's shown me a little bit of everything, great vision. An asset in the passing game. I want to see him improve a bit in pass protection. I don't think he was great in that regard. Tried, but just technique wasn't quite there. But very effective, up the gut, to the outside, screen game. Did all of those things well. Did a good job with his patience. Again, that line, you're going to have it, but the holes will be there. Some of them he was running up last year were just ridiculous. I'm sure you've seen the play that won the game against the Steelers, where frankly I think I could have took that one to the house. The cavern was that big, but still a heck of a player. More than happy to play a physical game, which isn't so true of a lot of the guys on this list. But I think he really can do it all. He's going to continue going from strength to strength, you'd think, and he's got a great group around him to help make him look even better. So, Zeke, sure he'll be competing for the rushing title over the next few seasons. He'll be trying to defend it next year. And then, this one was tough. But coming in at number 2, which I think will absolutely give away who number 1 is the Arizona Cardinals' David Johnson. What is there to say about this kid last year? I mean, this Cardinals offense pretty much fell to pieces compared to the year before, where they were dynamic in every facet, and he burst on the scene. And whilst he was incredibly effective that rookie season, my question was that he was playing on a really effective offense. Maybe things opened up, teams would figure out what he liked doing and how he was being used and adjust to it, and maybe he wouldn't be as effective in year 2. Turns out, totally wrong. He's just a transcendent talent. Incredible in the receiving game. He might be the second best receiver on their roster at this point in time, behind Larry Fitzgerald. Incredible runner. I mean, he can run with power, can run with elusiveness. He made some guys just look bad, both running through guys, running around guys. There was a couple of the runs against the Patriots in week 1 that were just phenomenal. Every run he is a threat. There were plays last year where he was breaking 4 or 5 tackles just to get like an 8 or 9 yard gain. The run blocking wasn't great. He was the Cardinals offense for a large chunk of the season. 15 straight 100-yard games from scrimmage. That's a pretty ridiculous number. I would like to see them bring someone else in. I don't want to see him getting that many touches next year. As entertaining as it would be for me to watch, for the long term, I wouldn't want to see him getting the ball that much. But I mean, what is there to say? This guy did literally everything last year. Everything at a high level. It's frankly, seeing how good he was, it's crazy that I'm putting someone ahead of him. But I have no choice. At number 1, we've got the Steelers, Le'Veon Bell. you see it mentioned all the time in the broadcast about his patience and his style of running. And whilst it is an overused kind of line, it is true. I've not really seen anyone that does it myself like he does, where sometimes he's pretty much almost at a standstill, or like, just a little jog, waiting to see what develops in front of him. Of course, he's got a very good line, but man, does he manipulate those lanes effectively. Again, like David Johnson, just an incredible weapon out of the backfield as a receiver. Again, probably their second best receiver last season. Excuse me. And again, absurdly elusive. Far more powerful. Again, more powerful than he looks. Remember when he was drafted, he was thought to be a power back, which is almost absurd to think at this point. He's shed a lot of weight, and it's paid off. He's just an incredible player to watch run the football. Again, inside, outside, can take any play the distance, makes guys miss, incredibly dangerous in the open field, but also in those small confined spaces. He just finds ways to get around people, and as I say, far more powerful than it looks. Again, this is like David Johnson. There's no real hole in his game. He can do everything. Those two, to me, are the perfect prototypical modern NFL running back. The only issue you get with Lev Bell is the injuries and the looming threat of suspension. But if you've got him on the field, he is the best running back in the league right now. Although David Johnson is so close behind, I really do feel like those two are at another level at this point in time. A few guys on this list that I think can get there, but they got to show it to me next year. So there you have it. That's my top 10 running backs currently in the NFL. Let me know, what do you guys think? Have I done anything you think is particularly obnoxious? I think Melvin Gordon, Devonta Freeman, they're probably the ones, and in fact Gurley made the list after last season. They're the ones I think might be a little contentious, and some people probably don't like Shady too much, but it's my list, my rules. But feel free to comment. I'm more than happy to discuss these things. Love talking ball, of course. Got the comment section below. Find us on Facebook, Cover Zero. Find me on Twitter @SimonConboy. More than happy to have these discussions. Come July, going to be a lot more active on social media. Going to give the channel a bit of a revamp. Hoping you guys will enjoy how that turns out. If you want to discuss anything from this episode, as I say, or anything about football in general, do as I just said, and we'll have a chat. And as always, check out some more of the videos. Like, share, subscribe, check out the Patreon, all that good stuff. It will all be greatly appreciated. I really do appreciate people checking the show out. And as always, thank you very much for your time. Been a pleasure. And go Bucks.